Boom, 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 boom. Now tell me what you gonna do when it ain't nowhere to run. When judgment comes for you. When judgment comes for you. Tell me what you gonna do when it ain't nowhere to hide. When judgment comes for you. 'Cause it's gonna come for you.
Making it for water, easy, see some for Charlie. Little boo for God's got him. And I'm gonna miss everybody out of roll and flow like I looked at a wild flag. And play for dust and they play too deep for beach side. Little legs I came to be. Tell me your feature deceased, would it please? Marry me by my grand new way. You can't go follow
God bless you, working on a plan to heaven.
Backbone Wrestling Network. Welcome back to the CrosUp, your weekly look back at the week that was professional wrestling. This week I'll be running through the results and happenings from Raw on May 11th to Collision on May the 16th. We open Raw with a Backlash recap as it was the previous weekend. Roman Reigns then arrives to the building and meets with Adam Pearce, who says Jacob Fatu isn't here. And Reigns asks for his championship because Jacob actually ended up with it on after Backlash. He had attacked him, obviously. Steals the belt and takes it with him. But Adam Pearce has obtained it and gives it back to Reigns. He says, and then he gets the title back. Like I said, Roman wants Fatu fired, but apparently that won't be happening. Reigns says he brought Fatu in, so he'll be the one to take him out. With that, Roman then heads into his special dressing room. We then have the Vision come out for a promo. Paul Heyman insults the inbred fans here and moves on to Seth Rollins, who was defeated by Bron Breakker at Backlash. Rollins is never going to be ready for a Vision over any of the team. Bron Breakker defeated Seth Rollins, and now we move on to the tag team champions. Austin Theory says the Street Profits need the titles because Bianca Belair can't pay the bills anymore. On top of that, there is Joe Hendry, and the Street Profits come out to interrupt. After Montez sucks up to the Knoxville crowd, obviously Bianca is from Knoxville, so he kind of, plays to the hometown crowd. He makes it clear that they want the tag team championships. Logan Paul says the only thing Ford has done in the last 6 months is organize a baby shower. Logan says Belair is better than Ford, and the Vision is ready. But as he says his name, Joe Hendry comes out to sing about Logan Paul being fired yet again. And then we get our scheduled 6-man tag that comes up next. The Street Profits and Joe Hendry are able to defeat the Vision when Bron Breakker comes out and attacks Bron Breakker, distracting him and distracting Theory long enough for Dawkins to sneak up and get a roll-up victory. After the match, Rollins helps Dawkins up, who then obviously Rollins then gets speared by Bron Breakker, and Montez Ford isn't happy about Rollins getting involved in their affairs. We then have the OG Grande Americano. He introduces us once again to Bruto and Julio Americano. He introduces them to Adam Pearce, but Dominic Mysterio and Liv Morgan come in. Morgan isn't impressed, and Dom says that Americano isn't even a real luchador. Americano isn't happy, but Pearce gives him a AAA mega title shot for tonight. That out of the way, Los Garza come in and say they're looking for an opportunity on Raw that they aren't getting on SmackDown. And Adam Pearce seems interested in bringing them in. We then have Penta come out. He says he heard what Ethan Page has been saying about him. He wants Page to say it to his face. So Ethan then comes out. Ethan says he would love to say it to his face, but there's a mask and paint covering it up. Instead, Ethan stands here with nothing hiding his face, and is from the greatest country in the world, Canada. Penta is ready to fight right now, but Ethan points out that he's not in wrestling gear. Ethan then says that both he and the title deserve his bigger spotlight, maybe like Saturday night's main event, which wasn't this coming up or the weekend that I'm going to cover this weekend, but next weekend, obviously. So I'll cover that on the next show. But Penta seems like he, is okay with that, and that's why they can have their match. Rusev interrupts before Penta can officially accept the challenge. Rusev doesn't like Penta, but Ethan tries to cut him off. Ethan doesn't want to skip the line, But Javon Evans went to see Adam Pearce and asked for a title shot over Rusev. Evans even asked why Rusev can get a title shot when he can't even beat Evans in the first place. This brings out Evans, who denies saying all of that, but gets shoved into Rusev. Penta takes out Page on the floor while Evans clears Rusev out as well and hits a suicide dive. And then back in, Javon and Penta both do the little Penta strut after they shake hands. So Javon and Penta get over in the segment. But I believe Ethan versus Penta is official for Saturday night's main event. So we'll see how that goes when they have that match. We then have a match where Javon Evans defeats Rusev via pinfall following an OG cutter. We then get video about the history of the AAA Mega title, showing us past champions such as El Macias and Tejano Jr. was on there as well. I don't know if he's Tejano Jr. or just Tejano, but we see some past champions. El Macias is obviously Mil Muertes from Lucha Underground, and Tejano was in Lucha Underground as well. So shows a few former AAA champions, some of the longer reigning ones. But then we go and we see Asuka. She comes up to hug Io Sky and wants Io to take her place as the veteran Japanese wrestler on the main roster in the women's division. They give each other a big hug, and Asuka, smiling, leaves, taking her bag with her. Rumors have been circulating and stuff like that she's kind of semi-retired at this point. She has to go. There's been some rumors that she has to go back to Japan and deal with some family matters or some personal business. Nothing has really come out as to what that is per se. Not that it's any of our business, but she is dealing with some personal stuff. We may see her soon. We may not. We'll see. Obviously, she put in a great bit of work throughout her career. She's been one of the highlights of the women's division over the past decade or so. So, going to go down as one of the all-time greats. So, honestly, if she's done now, more power to her. But hopefully we see her again. I can get a couple of more bangers out of her before she fully retires. We then go to Brie Bella and Paige. They're here to answer the challenge from the Judgment Day. Roxanne and Raquel come out with Roxanne talking about how she was asked to take how she was asked to take on the Bellas' legacy. How dare the Bellas set the bar that low? Brie then says the low bar would be Liv Morgan, and the only person who is disappointed is Roxanne's mom. Raquel then calms things down and mocks Paige, who is just waiting for her next disaster. The fight is on, with Liv Morgan running in to help. So Judgment Day ladies stand tall. We then have Jimmy Uso. He comes in to talk to Roman a little bit about dealing with Jacob. Reigns says that Fatu has to acknowledge him because they had that in the contract for the match, but Jimmy isn't sure that that's going to go all that well for the Usos and Roman. We then get video on Dominic's reign as AAA Mega Champion, showing, the match where he won it from Vikingo, and just kind of the successful defenses he's had to this point. We again get the Rhea Ripley NXT origin. Is able to avoid the Soul Snatcher, and then she executes a crucifix pin to get the win. And after the match, they shake hands, so everything's all good. We then look at Jacob Fatu attacking Roman after their match at Backlash. Jey Uso is waiting on Fatu when Jimmy Uso comes up. Roman said that that was terrible, and Fatu has to acknowledge him. We then recap the announcement of the John Cena Classic, which is a fan-voted competition where wins and losses might not end up mattering, but it's about the performance and about new generations taking on an old generation. We really still don't have any details on when or where it's going to be. Like I said, I hope it's kind of towards the latter part of the year so they can kind of restack the NXT division if it's going to be NXT versus main roster because NXT got pretty gutted after WrestleMania there. So we'll see when we get more announcements about that. They run down the Saturday night's main event card. The Street Profits challenging the Vision for the tag team titles is officially added, and Penta defending the Intercontinental title against Ethan Page is official as well. We then go to the Street Profits. They are happy with the news of their tag team title match, but Seth Rollins interrupts. He says if they want the titles, Rollins thinks that they need to talk, but Montez says there is no we between the three of them. Rollins apologizes, though Montez doesn't trust him and says they don't need his help. Angelo seems kind of maybe that they should take his help, but ends up walking away and going with his partner, obviously. We then get Io Sky congratulating Sol Ruca on making the main roster and having a great match with her earlier, and says they will meet again in the future. Ruka says she looks forward to it, and Io walks away. Becky Lynch then comes up and decides to mock Sol for losing earlier. We then have the Oba Femi Open Challenge, but Adam Pearce interrupts and says that no one is going to answer the Open Challenge tonight. Therefore, there is no match, which doesn't sit well with Oba. He goes to the back. He ends up just grabbing Los Garza. They were just sitting there talking to some random women. Brings them to the ring. They are in street clothes, but we end up getting a referee anyways. And then Oba Femi absolutely squashes them, and he pins Berto after the fall from grace. We then go to the OG El Grande Americano. He talks about wanting the AAA Mega title, and he plans on winning it tonight from Dom. We then have JD McDonough. He is walking Dominic Mysterio to the ring when Finn Balor jumps JD from behind. Balor says Dom will have to do it tonight on his own, which it doesn't end up being true because Grande Americano 2.0 ends up distracting the OG Americano, allowing Dom to hit the 619 and the Frog Splash. So Dom retains his AAA Mega title. We then have the Vision. They're in the back. They're sick of Joe Hendry, with Logan Paul threatening to cut his ears off if he has to listen to another Joe Hendry song about him. They go to leave, and they get in the car, and we see that Maxine Dupree is in the passenger seat. So I think we saw Austin Theory talking to her in the background on one of the shots previous week, but now she's in the car with them. So we'll see if she joins the Vision, or we'll see what it kind of leads. We'll see what that eventually leads to. But she's been seen with Austin Theory twice recently, so we'll see what goes on with that. We then have our main event segment. Roman Reigns and Jimmy Uso are coming out for the acknowledgement ceremony. After Roman hits the acknowledge me catchphrase to the crowd, Jacob Fatu arrives, with Jey Uso trying to talk him out of the likely violence that he's about to inflict. They're kind of in guerrilla position. Fatu then ends up headbutting Jey, leaving him laying before heading out to the ring. Fatu says that Roman is going to have to beat the acknowledgement out of him. Jimmy tries to calm Fatu down and gets beaten up in the aisleway for his efforts. Fatu then hits the ring, and the fight is on between him and Roman. Roman manages to knock him down and grab a chair. The big beatdown is on, and the spear is cut off by a super kick. Fatu then gets the Tongan death grip and sends Roman outside, and then he hits a suicide dive. Roman's down. Fatu shouts about how Roman left his family for dead. The announcer's table is loaded up, but Reigns hits a Superman punch. A second edition is countered with the Tonga death grip again, and then Jacob hits a powerbomb through the table. Fatu then holds up the World Heavyweight title, and then he actually gets both Usos and Roman against the barricade, and he does he does like the Umaga running hip attack that he used to do in the corner, but he puts Roman and both Usos through the barricade, and now the show is out and fades to black with Jacob standing tall above them all. Awesome end to Raw. Continues to make Jacob look like a killer. I do feel like he has to win at some point during this feud, or it's pretty much for nothing. I heard somebody on a podcast recently talk about how they've kind of built all of a few too many guys as these like unstoppable killers So then you're putting him in these title programs because, like, obviously they're good enough to get to that point, but then you're not strapping them up. We've got Oba like that. We've got Braun Breaker like that. Gunther's even like that to a point. Like, you gotta start giving these guys, accolades that they can win and stuff like that, and actually pulling the trigger on some of these new guys that are getting over. But each one of those guys could be world champions right now, and none of them are. None of them have seemed to rise to that occasion quite yet. So we've got to start letting some of these guys. You got to let them sink or swim. You got to give them the titles. I'm not saying Roman should lose the title this quickly, but it's going to make guys. It's going to make fans eventually like give up on these guys because they're just constantly not winning the big one. If you're going to keep making these guys unstoppable killers until they get title shots, you got to eventually strap them up. So we'll see what happens with this. Even if you want to do a quick change back, if he wins, if he wins at Clash in Italy and loses it back at SummerSlam or the Saudi show or whatever one of the next few pay-per-views are, who knows? But Jacob and all these other guys that I just mentioned need to win these matches eventually and win the big one, or they're going to kind of be seen as, they can't get the final, they can't get the final prize at the end. So, but as far as best match on Raw, I would go with Io and Soul. I thought they had a pretty good face versus face match. And that one's one I would check out for sure. We then go to NXT. We open with Tatum Paxley and Lizzie Rain defeating Nikita Lyons and Zarya when Lizzie hits the Thunderstroke kick on Nikita. We then have Kendall Gray. She insists that Ring Claire isn't a distraction to her. Ren is on crutches. I don't know exactly what the injury was. Obviously, it's something with her leg, but she is on crutches for the night, and that'll come into play later. Kendall's, like I said, Kendall says she's not a distraction despite her injury. Lola Vice then comes in, and Kendall is ready to show her that wrestling is better than MMA, and they kind of get in each other's face because obviously they want to fight for their version of grappling. And obviously Kendall thinks being an amateur wrestler is a little bit more impressive than being an MMA fighter. We didn't have the in-ring debut of Naraku. He defeats Lince Dorado via pinfall following the Abyss, which is an STO. After the match, Naraku grabs the mic and says that he is pure evil. So obviously a callback to his previous name. We then have EK Prosper. He is glad to have Tate Wilder and Sean Legacy teaming with him in the six-man tag later on. Tate Wilder is still trying to find his spot around here, but plans to show up tonight. Dorian Van Dukes then comes in and says he is ready to go as well if they need him in their corner. We then have that six-man tag Birthright with represented by Uriah Connors, Stax, and Charlie Dempsey defeat Tate Wilder, EK Prosper, and Sean Legacy. Tate kind of refuses to tag out and eventually catches up with him, and Connors and Stax finish things off with like a pair of running kicks that kind of meet in the middle and kick him at the same time and end up getting a pin. We then have Tatum Paxley. She is happy with the tag win earlier, and if she even decides to give her partner in the match, Lizzie Rain, a North American title shot next week. Shiloh Hill then comes in and says he's been researching newcomer Tristan Angels and all about his sheep farming family and all that kind of stuff. Angels then comes in. He says he doesn't like Shiloh and suggests that if they get in the ring, he would outclass him very easily. We then have the culling. They want to get rid of some people, with Izzy Dame obviously focusing on Lola Vice and the women's championship. They also do this weird thing where, Izzy talks a little bit, Nico Vance talks a little bit, and they go to leave, but Izzy kind of tells Sean that Nico and her are going to stay behind. So I think, and she even gives him a look earlier in the interview too, I think they're kind of planting the seeds that the two younger parts of the culling obviously are starting to think that listening to Sean Spears probably isn't doing too much for their career. So I think they're kind of starting to plant the seed that maybe we'll get a, kicking the leader out of the group kind of situation. But we'll see if that continues to play out going forward. But I could definitely tell during this that they're starting to probably play with the idea that Sean Spears might not be in the culling too much longer. We then have Robert Stone. He brings out Mason Rook for his NXT contract signing. Rook talks about turning heads around the world, including getting John Cena's attention. That's not enough for him, though, because he is about to crush people. Tony D'Angelo comes out. D'Angelo is paying attention to Rook, but Cam Hendricks once again comes out to try to jump Tony from behind. Tony is able to catch him a little bit this time. They battle for a little bit, and then Rook dives out onto them, gets back in the ring, and signs his contract. And then the fans sing about him being big and bad, and he can even beat up your dad. So apparently that's a chant that he had when he was in Progress and stuff like that. So, but he's definitely big and bad, that's for sure. We then have Romeo Moreno praising Noam Dar like he did last week, but he's watching one of his previous matches, talks about his abilities, and Noam's not quite sure he is that guy again, but continues to kind of train, get ready for his match. We then have Emily Agard, kind of our field reporter that kind of debuted next week. Our newest assignment is talking to OTM. They're having a cookout at one of their houses. They have some hot dogs and talk about Lucian Price's brother. Price and his brother had to work to get here, and both know how to put in effort. They lost their mom at a young age, so they have, Lucian's been kind of raising his brother from a young age, and had to be the kind of the man of the house earlier than he probably should have had to. We then kind of talk about a little bit about Bronco Nima. He likes to plan things out, and he's even kind of put out that he is quite the artist. So we just kind of get a little bit more of it's kind of a personality piece of OTM. But we then have our next match where Jackson Drake is able to defeat Noam Dar via pinfall following a distraction from Micah, allowing Drake to take advantage and hit the 450 for the win. After the match, Dark State comes out to stare at Vanity Project, but they don't quite come to the ring. They just stay in the entranceway. Miles Bourne in the back then comes up to Tavion Heights to talk about a tag match next week. Heights thinks that he and Bourne are going to be teaming with each other, but it's actually Bourne teaming with Tony D'Angelo. Tavion takes this as Miles thinking he's not good enough to be Bourne's partner anymore, even though Bourne says that's not what it's about at all. Either way, Tavion's pissed and storms off. We go back to the NXT arena. Dark State is now in the ring while the Vanity Project is in the aisle. Dark State won a title shot, but gets shut down with Brad Baylor bragging that they took the titles from Dark State in the first place. It's fine with Dark State because they've already gotten the match made, whether they like it or not. Dark State then huddles and says the team has to get the titles back, or it might be time for a change. Either way, the Vanity Project runs in from behind, but Dark State quickly ends up on top. We then have Robert Stone. He is with Naraku in the back. He gives him a very intense handshake. Stone then leaves and runs into Cam Hendricks and Mason Rook, who aren't happy about the tag match against Tony and Miles. They're basically told to get over it. And then Tate Wilder comes in, who wants a match next week. Keanu Carvers then comes in and says he wants one too. So Tate is going to take on Keanu next week. We then have Callie Armstrong. She wants to scout the women's division around here. Kendall Gray and Ren Sinclair that pop up for a bit of a stare down as she heads out for her main event match, where Kalani Jordan defeats Kendall Gray via pinfall when Izzy Dame and Lola Vice actually end up battling around ringside. And they bump into Ren, who, like I said earlier, is hurt. She is knocked down and, is settling the injury. And Kendall gets distracted. This allows Kalani to knock Kendall to the mat from the top rope, and then she finishes things off with the one-of-a-kind. After the match, Kendall Gray gets in Lola Vice's face and they argue some more. But Izzy Dame ends up attacking Lola from behind. And that kind of ends the show with Izzy standing tall with the women's title, and Kendall kind of checking on Ren and making sure she's okay. But that match was solid to end the show. But as far as best match for NXT, I would go with the 6-man tag, kind of the new guys versus Birthright. I thought that was a really solid, pretty action-packed tag team match. So check that one out if you haven't already. We then have Dynamite. We'll go to that. We go to earlier today. MJF wouldn't answer the question whether he would put his hair on the line at Double or Nothing for the world title. He then passed a surprising number of bald men before running into the Demand and Ricochet. Ricochet says MJF would look good bald, but not as good as him. We then go to our first match. It is a 10-man tag. It is Adam Copeland and Christian Cage teaming with Orange Cassidy and the Young Bucks. So that they end up getting the victory. They defeat FTR, the War Dogs, and Tommaso Ciampa. Connors ends up getting triple super kicked by the Bucks and Orange Cassidy. And then Edge hits the spear and pins Connors for the win. We then we go to the Death Riders training area this week. It seems to be on the rooftop of some building, maybe the arena, maybe somewhere else. But Will Ospreay is training his neck. He's like bending. He's like standing on his neck with his legs kind of bent back. He's kind of he's really contorted and stuff like that. But he's like resting on his head so his neck could get trained and strengthened and stuff like that. And then John Moxley talks about how Ospreay used to fly like a bird, and because that's what birds do. But now he needs to be a bird of prey. We then get some video of Stadium Stampede and previous iterations of it throughout the years, kind of hyping up this year's version. We then have the Demand. They have Mark Davis with them. He will be one of their partners, as well as Andrade El Idolo and the Dogs, or the War Dogs. They are introduced as other team members. But obviously the War Dogs just lost their tag team match, so maybe not the best pick there by old Ricochet. But members of the Don Callis family and the War Dogs will be joining the Demand. We then have Mike Bailey. He defeats Westbrook via pinfall following the Ultimate Weapon. Kevin Knight then comes out to get in the ring because he has an open challenge next. But he talks about him and Speedball heading towards bigger and better things. Kevin Knight then defeats a returning Brian Cage via pinfall following the UFO splash. After the match, Speedball then gets into the ring and congratulates Kevin on his win. And Knight even welcomes Brian Cage back because obviously, like I said, this was his return match. Speedball then says that Kevin is a future world champion, but he wants the next world title shot after Darby defends it tonight. He wants to be the next one to get the shot. We then show the men's Owen Hart Cup brackets. We are going to start things off with Samoa Joe versus Will Ospreay, Mark Davis versus Jack Perry, Swerve Strickland versus Bandito, and Claudio Castagnoli versus Brody King. Joe versus Ospreay and Swerve versus Bandito will both be on the Double or Nothing card in the finals of each tournament, or of this tournament and the women's tournament will be at Forbidden Door. We then go to Jack Perry. He's holding a knife. He talks about how Mark Davis needed a golf club to beat him. They'll fight at Double or Nothing in Stadium Stampede, and then it's back to basics where Jack will start his rise towards being the world champion. We then have Will Ospreay defeat Ace Austin via submission with a cross arm breaker. After the match, Ospreay shows Austin some respect. This brings out Samoa Joe and the Ops, with Joe saying Ospreay could have had a first round bye, but he made his decisions by sticking with the Death Riders instead of joining the Ops. Therefore, it is time for Pain at Double or Nothing. Tonight, though, the rest of the Ops head to the ring But the Death Riders then come out before things can get violent. Ospreay looks at John Moxley and seems to think that there might be some benefits to having friends around here. We then have MJF. He interrupts Konosuke Takeshita and praises him for what he has been doing. Takeshita is going to win the title tonight, and MJF thinks he would be a great first challenger. With Takeshita gone, MJF gives Don Callis the Dynamite Diamond Ring. Andrade El Idolo then comes in to stare at MJF and says he wants the title if MJF becomes champion. So we'll see what all happens with that. So everybody gunning for the world title, whether it's Darby or MJF as champion. We then get the women's brackets for the Owen Hart tournament. We open with a AAA representative, and I believe a representative from Stardom. It's going to be Persephone versus Hazuki. We then have Willow Nightingale taking on Alex Windsor, Mina Shirakawa versus Athena from ROH, and then Sky Blue versus Sari, who is also a Japanese representative. Nightingale and Windsor is the only match from this tournament that will be on Double or Nothing. And again, like I said, the finals will be at Forbidden Door. The conglomeration, we then go to the conglomeration. They aren't sure which combination of them should get the tag title shot that they earned last week. Willow Nightingale says she is going to win the Women's Owen Cup. And Mark Briscoe is finally back and wants Tommaso Ciampa next week on Dynamite. We then have Hikaru Shida and the Brawling Birds. They defeat the Triangle of Madness via DQ when Tekla comes in with her women's world title and uses it so they get disqualified. After the match, they beat him down until Mina Shirakawa and Willow Nightingale run him off. We then get a video on Roosh. They continue to kind of hype him up. He's been, he's obviously had a lot of vignettes lately, and he's won quite a few squash matches lately. So just continuing to try to hype him up. We then have Darby Allin win the main event. He defeats Konosuke Takeshita via pinfall following 2 coffin drops. We then have, after the match, Darby grabs the mic and wants MJF's decision right now because they will, he wants to have the answer because otherwise he's giving the title shot to someone else. We then have a table set up for contract signing. MJF comes out with Darby wasting no time in signing the contract. MJF can't bring himself to do it, though, instead talking about how Darby always believes that making people happy matters. Deep down, though, the people know that Darby is someone who got lucky. At Double or Nothing, MJF is going to become a 3-time world champion before the age, or at just 30 years old. Darby promises to make MJF bald at Double or Nothing, and that's enough to get the signature. They brawl. Obviously, Darby's in somewhat of a weakened state, and MJF leaves him laying, but Kevin Knight runs in to break up a super tombstone before the end of the show. So Kevin Knight comes to save Darby. But obviously, the damage had been done throughout the match, and obviously MJF ended up on top here. So we will see how that match goes at Double or Nothing. That's obviously next weekend as well. Probably won't be covered till the following CrosUp because obviously they do Sunday pay-per-view, so it's tough for me to kind of get that in before the end of the weekend. So, but as far as best match on Dynamite, I would go with Darby versus Takeshita. They went all out. Takeshita is one of the best in the world. Darby's on a pretty good heater right now, and they're just letting him do a lot of stuff, letting him have a lot of these really brutal and kind of extended matches. So definitely a really good match to check out. We then go to Impact. We have an opening video that looks at Leon Slater's near record-breaking X Division title reign, with only Cedric Alexander tonight standing in his way of breaking the all-time record. We then have a number 1 contender for the world title battle royal. Eric Young is actually able to win, last eliminating Elijah when they're both kind of on the apron, and he hits him with the low blow, and Elijah ends up kind of crumpling to the floor. The other participants in the Battle Royal were Eddie Edwards, Bear Bronson, Brian Myers, Mr. Elegance, the returning Mustafa Saeed from ECW, who looked absolutely terrible, but he was in there with his trash can and his bandana and all that good stuff. BDE was in there, Vincent, Dutch, Frankie Kazarian, Hometown Man, Agent Zero, John Schuyler, and Jason Hotch. But Eric Young is your new number one contender for the world title. We then have Leon Slater. He says that this isn't just another title match tonight because it's a chance to rewrite the history books. His buddy, the Hardys, then come in and offer some words of, some kind of words to hype him up and to kind of encourage him before he goes out there tonight. We then have Mustafa Ali. He yells at the other members of Order 4 for not winning the Battle Royal earlier and says next week the open challenge for his international title will be back on. We then have Eric Young. He says he promises to win the world title and cleanse this place like he's been promising for months and months at this point. We then have Lei Ying Lee come out for a promo. She says last week was the greatest night of her life, and she got her Knockouts title back. She is proud of herself for bringing the title back to TNA, and while her English isn't the best, she wants to say thank you from the bottom of her heart. Zaya Brookside then comes out to interrupt, saying she wants the title. Lei Ying Lee then rants in Chinese and translates to English, saying that they can do this right now. Brookside then breaks out a little bit of Chinese herself and says no and calls her a bitch. So we'll see. We'll obviously see that match at some point, but obviously it wasn't meant to happen tonight. We then have the System. They promised to take out Moose, and then Cedric Alexander cuts a promo about the fact that he will become the new X Division champion later tonight. We then get Keith Jardine. He is a star for an upcoming movie. He is in the crowd and kind of gets interviewed. But the Elegance brand interrupts. Jardine isn't impressed, so Mr. Elegance kind of gets in Jardine's face, and then security eventually has to break them apart. We then have the street fight between AJ Francis and Casey Navarro. AJ Francis wins the match after he hits a down payment chokeslam from the ring to the outside through a pair of tables. He then rolls Navarro back in the ring and pins him for the win. We then look at Leon Slater winning the X Division title last year at Slammiversary from Moose, as another kind of hype towards the main event. We then go to Mike Santana. He cuts a promo. Santana talks about his actions and words matching up. Now he has a new challenger. He's facing Eric Young, who helped build this place throughout the years, but Santana is the one who helped build this place in the AMC era. This brings out Daria Ray, who says his next challenger is actually Steve Macklin, and they will face each other next week. No, she didn't explain this to Santino Marella, so Santino comes out. He likes the title match, but he has his own announcements. First of all, Indy Hartwell has re-signed with TNA. Marella is also proud of Lei Ying Lee, but Daria Ray brings up Santino Marella's recent issues with his daughter, and this kind of, her losing the title last week kind of reflects badly on him. Santana then cuts both of them off and says next week he'll beat anyone in his way to keep this title. We then have Rosemary and Allie. They defeat Victoria Crawford and Mila Moore when Rosemary hits As Above, So Below on Crawford. We then get another video on Leon Slater, kind of his, his reign throughout the year and his, success as the X Division champion and all that kind of stuff. We then go to the Broken Hardys. They cut another promo kind of in their broken state and says they are ready to delete the righteous. And then we get our main event. It's 2 out of 3 falls for the X Division title. Cedric Alexander actually defeats Leon Slater in the third and final fall by hitting back-to-back lumbar checks. And Cedric Alexander is your new X Division champion, stopping Leon Slater just a day short of being the all-time longest reigning champion. So kind of sucks for Leon. Again, Leon's one of those guys that's gotten a lot of attention from WWE. So, I think he probably ends up there eventually. Maybe this is the time for him to kind of make the jump. I don't know what his contract situation is, but I imagine they'll have some kind of rematch. But I imagine this is either him starting to vault towards the world title if his contract's not coming up soon, or this is probably about the time he will make his WWE jump. But after the match, we actually get a debut. Fabian Eichner, previously from NXT, also known as Giovanni Vinci in WWE, but former member of Imperium. He shows up to make his debut in TNA, and he stares at Cedric to end the show. So we'll see what he can do here. Obviously, I think he's one of those guys that probably was not used quite as well as he could have. I think he's a very talented guy. I was very impressed with him during his Imperium days. He was very good in the tag team, and I think when he was able to show what he could do as a single star, I think he's actually a pretty good in-ring worker. So we'll see if TNA is able to use him a little bit better than WWE did, but excited to see what he can do. But Cedric and Leon was absolutely the best match of the show. I would definitely check it out. If you're not a watcher of Impact already, I think they really put it all out on the line. I would have liked Leon to win, I should say, and break the record. But obviously, the system kind of takeover seemingly is kind of happening slowly but surely, because now they have the tag titles and the X Division Championship. So you can imagine Eddie's probably going to win the world title somewhere down the line. We'll then go from there to SmackDown. We get a Backlash recap once again. We're in Columbia, South Carolina. So Trick Williams, the local hero, comes out and gets a huge pop. He has the South Carolina Gamecocks mascot with him as well, so that might have helped with the reaction. Trick talks about his time at a local high school, university, and restaurant. That's where he dubbed the shoes the Lemon Pepper Steppers, and now his family is here to watch him. The Miz and Kit Wilson actually come out to interrupt him. The Miz mocks the mascot, thinking Big Bird is going to be the one that comes out next. Little Yachty then mocks them for being cursed, so Kit busts out the slam poetry book. After mocking Trick and Yachty, it turns out that that trying to outrhyme a professional rapper, bad idea, as Yachty destroys them both right afterwards. Miz wants a fight right now, so Trick smacks Kit in the face and then knocks Miz to the outside. We then have a match where Trick defeats the Miz via pinfall when Kit and Yachty get into it on the outside, which distracts Miz long enough for Trick to hit a trick shot. We then have Carmelo Hayes. He is ready to face Ricky Saints because when he shoots, he doesn't miss. Saints comes in to say the world has changed since Carmelo was here. Carmelo's been resting up an injury over the last few weeks. But Hayes is ready to humble Saints later tonight. We then have Sami Zayn. He apologizes to Nick Aldis for his recent actions and wants one more shot at Trick Williams. Aldis says Sami's going to have to earn it, which has Zayn losing his mind about everything changing around here. Rey Fenix comes up to try to calm him down, but Sami keeps ranting, and Phoenix doesn't want to hear it, so he walks away. Then have Paige and Brie Bella. They are ready for anyone and everyone coming for their women's tag team titles, including the Irresistible Forces, who come up to say that they are coming for them soon. They want their shot. They want their fair number one shot, or one-on-one shot between the two teams. So we'll see when and if that happens. Brie and Paige then defeat Kiana James and Julia when Paige hits Rampage on Kiana for the win. We then look at Gunther trying to jump Cody Rhodes last week and not having as much success as he had previously. We have Tiffany Stratton. She is getting interviewed, and Kiana James and Julia are kind of arguing in the background, which kind of interrupts it for a little bit. With that out of the way, Chelsea Green then comes up talking about them being besties. Tiffany is trying to be nice about it, but implies that maybe it's not a good idea if they team up, and then she kind of just flat out says it. Chelsea then plays it off like, that's what Tiffy does. She kind of, that's how they kind of talk to each other and play with each other and stuff like that. So Chelsea's seemingly either not getting it or is going to make this partnership happen. We then have Cody Rhodes with the contract for the match at the Clash in Italy to face Gunther. He builds his own contract signing set. He gets a table out, sets the contract on it. He calls out Gunther. Gunther comes out. He talks about how much time he put into planning this. But Cody Rhodes was a typical American who had to make it all by himself. or all about himself, I should say. All Gunther wants Rhodes to do is ask nicely and not make it weird. Gunther tries to walk him through it, but Royce Keys, of all people, comes out and interrupts. If Gunther won't say it, he will, and then Keys goes to sign the contract. Gunther cuts him off before he can actually sign it, though. So here is Nick Aldis to say Gunther didn't sign. So tonight it's Keys versus Gunther, and whoever wins gets the title shot. That's fine with Cody, who respects Royce, but gives him the same easy to find, hard to beat line that he's been throwing out a lot lately. Solo Sikoa tells Tama Tonga to deal with Damian Priest tonight and then leaves with Tala Tonga. Shinsuke comes in to talk to Tama, but Tala comes back and jumps Shinsuke and even puts him through a table. So they are officially tired of Shinsuke shit. Gunther then is in the back and yells at Nick Aldis about giving Royce Keys the opportunity, but Aldis says Gunther can only blame himself for not signing the contract quicker. We then have Carmelo Hayes. He defeats Ricky Saints via pinfall. Saints had attempted to cheat by putting his feet on the ropes during a roll-up, but Carmelo Hayes does the exact same thing but doesn't get caught by the ref and gets the win. We then have R-Truth. He thanks Royce Keys for helping with the MFTs last week. Says he can get Keys in the new Judgment Day that him and Damian are forming. Damian then comes in to suggest that he doesn't trust Keys because Solo Sikoa hasn't attacked him yet. And he has bad vibes with the MFTs, who obviously they're feuding with right now. R-Truth can understand, and he says he will stay in the back tonight for Damian's match because he is not medically cleared. We then have Danhausen. He goes into his lab and answers an old phone. He then wheels out what looks like a Frankenstein monster and then starts to type on the computer a lot. So he's trying to come up with a giant Danhausen or a Gianthausen or whatever you want to say. Obviously he had the Minihausen at the pay-per-view, but he's trying to get a little bit more help, maybe a little bit more size on his team. So we'll see what he can come up with. There's a interesting rumor floating out there about who this might be. So I'll hold that one in the chamber for now. But I think pretty much anybody that wants to know knows who that might be. We then have Damian Priest. He defeats Tama Tonga via pinfall, following the South of Heaven. After the match, the MFTs run in to beat Priest down. Obviously, R-Truth can't come and make the save, so Priest is kind of just out there by himself. We then have Sami Zayn ranting to Johnny Gargano, who's obviously laying down in a dazed state. Candice LeRae comes in and is kind of tired of Sami ranting. Though Sami just rants some more and talks to Johnny about guys like them don't need to listen to outside noise. They just need to be the best wrestlers in the world, like they always are. And you even see Johnny Gargano's eyes move when Sami eventually walks away. So maybe we might get some kind of partnership between Sami and Johnny going forward, which could be an interesting team, or maybe a mentor-mentee kind of situation. I think Gargano's probably a little bit too experienced to maybe be, kind of a protege for somebody at this point. But if it gives him something to do, he's a super talented wrestler. So, like I said, if they could be a tag team or even just an older and younger kind of mentor-mentee situation, could be something interesting for them to do. We then look back at Jade Cargill returning last week and laying out Rhea Ripley. Jade and Michin and BFAB come out to cut a promo. Jade isn't surprised that people change their tunes when she is in their face. At Clash in Italy, she gets her title back, but here are Charlotte and Alexa Bliss to interrupt. Charlotte is ready to go after Jade, who doesn't seem impressed. Instead, Charlotte and Bliss are ready for their scheduled match. We go to commercial. We come back. We get another Blake Monroe vignette. She is still on her way. We still haven't seen her pop up actually on the show. We've just seen these vignettes. But I heard, and again, I'm reading stuff on Twitter and online. I did hear a rumor that she is supposed to be at SmackDown next week. So we'll see if she finally debuts. We then have Charlotte and Alexa. They defeat BFAB and Michin, but it's by DQ when they have their match. When they basically have the match won, but Jade pulls Alexa out during the pinfall and attacks her, so that draws the DQ. After the match, Charlotte clears out BFAB and Michin, but Jade doesn't seem like she wants to get into the fight too much, so she kind of stays on the outside. We then have Fatal Influence. They don't seem impressed by any of the other tag teams or groups around here. They say they are a real team who will get all the gold. And yes, that is absolutely a threat to the rest of the roster. We then go to the back. Charlotte isn't happy with Rhea not being there and isn't used to needing help. Alexa doesn't seem thrilled about it either, but she says they need help no matter what. We then look back at Roman Reigns versus and Jacob Fatu's brawl from Raw, with Fatu smashing Roman yet again. We then have Solo Sikoa. He still tries to get Royce Keys on his side and threatens violence otherwise, but Royce doesn't buy what Solo is selling and doesn't seem too put off by the idea that violence was sent his way. And then ends up costing him, because in the main event, Gunther defeats Royce Keys when Solo doesn't really mean to distract him, but he does distract him nonetheless. And Gunther finishes things off with a big clothesline and powerbomb and becomes the number one contender. So Gunther versus Cody at Clash in Italy for the WWE Championship. And that was the best match of the show. Like I say with a couple of people throughout all the promotions, but if Gunther's in a match on a show, odds are it's probably going to be the best match on that show, and this was no different. So definitely check out Gunther versus Royce. And then we will go to Collision to wrap up the week. We go to After Dynamite. Jon Moxley and the Death Riders complain about not being able to quite beat Kyle O'Reilly throughout the last year. In theory, that means Kyle O'Reilly will be the next Continental Champion, but Moxley is going to find a way to beat him. Claudio talks about his Owen Hart match against Brody King and says he is ready to face him and beat him to advance in that tournament. And then Pac, Garcia, and Yuta kind of pop up and say they're ready to face anybody who steps in their way. We then have the conglomeration represented by Mark Briscoe, Orange Cassidy, and Kyle O'Reilly. They defeat Shane Taylor Promotions. They are represented by Carly Bravo, Sean Dean, and Lee Moriarty. Briscoe gets the win by hitting the J Driller on Sean Dean. We then go to Will Ospreay. He is ready for the Owen Hart tournament. He says he respects Samoa Joe and means no disrespect by not joining the Ops, but no one is stopping him from winning the Owen Cup and winning the world title. He respects Joe, but it's not personal. The Death Riders are just helping him heal his neck. So that's the only thing he's really in that for. The conglomeration are happy that they won. O'Reilly is ready for Moxley, and Briscoe says he is ready for Tommaso Ciampa on Dynamite. We then have Willow Nightingale saying that she wants all the gold. She wants to win the women's Owen Cup and become the number one contender, and she can become double champ as she's a TBS champion, and she would then be the number one contender for the women's world title. We then have Willow retaining her TBS title, defeating Red Velvet via pinfall, falling the Babe with a powerbomb. We look back again at the women's Owen Hart Cup brackets that I went over on Dynamite. We get video of Sammy Guevara, who's taking on Darby Allin for the world title later tonight. Sammy says he knows he can beat Darby Allin as he's done it 4 times before. He says then he'll beat MJF and shave him bald, but he won't shave him completely bald. He'll leave him a fade. We then go to Darby Allin. He isn't surprised that MJF isn't here. He's here to defend the title, though, because he loves this. He says if Speedball wants that title shot, bring it on Dynamite. We then have Tommaso Ciampa. He is attacking Mark Briscoe in the back, and they brawl into the arena where Briscoe whips him into the barricade. Briscoe throws in some chairs along with Ciampa, but the J Driller is broken up with a low blow. Ciampa cheers him down and takes Briscoe up to the top, but the conglomeration run in, make the save, and Briscoe says he wants their match to be a no DQ match on Dynamite. And Tommaso seems to somewhat agree by kind of nodding. We then look back at the Owen Hart Cup brackets for the men's side before we go to a tag team match where Samoa Joe and Anthony Bowens of the Ops defeat Lethal Twist of Lee Johnson and Jay Lethal when Joe and Bowens actually get both men to tap to the Coquina Clutch and Twisting Armbar, respectively. After the match, Anthony Bowens grabs the mic, talks about how he was confused for a long time, but then he found the Ops, and it's a perfect fit. He is the pride of professional wrestling and your hero, crediting Joe with his change in attitude. Joe grabs the mic, tells Will Ospreay that decisions have consequences, and while Ospreay sees it as a dream match, it's going to be a nightmare for him. We then look at Swerve Strickland attacking Bandito last night on the Supercard of Honor show. Ring of Honor had a match, or had a pay-per-view the previous night. Brody King then threatens Swerve with violence, but Bandito says he has to do this one by himself. So he respects and thanks Brody for willing to stand up for him, but he needs to have the match with Swerve on his own. We then have the Divine Dominion defeat PTBN favorite, No-So favorite, Backbone favorite, Allie Ketch and Kaya McKenna when the Divine Dominion hit the Divine Intervention on Allie Ketch. So good to see Allie get a spot on Collision. Happy to see her get a spot on TV. We then get video on the Double or Nothing women's title match. Obviously, the four-way that has been kind of hyped up over the last few weeks. Athena and Mini Shirakawa then kind of argue with each other in the back. They have a Owen Hart Cup match coming up, so we'll see more about them going forward. But like I said earlier, we go to some highlights from last night's Ring of Honor show. We see Nigel McGuinness had a match. He won. They show some highlights from that. We also see Action Andretti turning on Leo Rush, costing him his match for the Ring of Honor television title against AR Fox. We then go to Leo Rush getting interviewed by Nigel. Rush seems to be in kind of a normal state. He's had obviously the split personality thing where he kind of goes into this weird thing where he just yells and makes noises a lot. But he seems like he's in a normal state. He's got sunglasses on, drinking some coffee. He says things like this that happened with Action Andretti happen. And he says when he was asked about Andretti costing him the match, he insists that everything is fine. But when Nigel walks away, he takes the sunglasses off to reveal that he has like his eyes are red from contacts, obviously. But then he spits like blue goo out of his mouth. So just more weirdness, more stupidness, more doesn't need to happen or doesn't need attention paid towards it. But whatever. But we then go to our next match. The War Dogs and Mark Davis defeat the Rascals when Connors and Finley hit the last clip on Myron Reed. We then go to an interview with Anna Jay. She has a lot left to do in this company before she's all said and done. And then Tay Mello comes in to join her, and their team seems to be back on. So maybe a run at the tag team titles is in the works for TJ. So we'll see what happens with them. We then have a pretty good little hardcore match between Darby and Sammy Guevara. It actually starts with a swanton from a ladder in the entranceway. That's kind of the first spot of the match. You know, Sammy kind of beats Darby down and then swantons him through the table on the entranceway. They have a pretty good match after that. Darby wins via pinfall. He is able to avoid a 630, and then he takes advantage by hitting the coffin drop for the win and retaining his title. That was the best match on the show for sure. You know, you're always going to get me with a swanton spot through the table. So, but I will say throughout this match and kind of towards the end of the match, obviously I don't think this Darby run is, going to be super lengthy or anything like that. But I think you can start to see the cracks kind of forming and his body just breaking down. He's had a ton of these matches lately. He's wrestled on Collision and Dynamite the last few weeks. And I think it's starting to take its toll on him. So I think obviously by the time we get to by the time we get to Double or Nothing, his body's going to be pretty broken down, and MJF is going to take advantage of it. I'm fairly positive. We'll see. I think it would be funny if MJF ends up with his hair shaved off and stuff like that. But I see MJF taking advantage of kind of a broken down Darby Allin, because I think his body's just not going to be able to hold up. So, I mean, I could be totally wrong, but we'll see. But I could definitely tell as this match kind of rolled on that he was not in the best state. So, but that'll wrap it up for the week. As always, thanks for joining me each and every week. I will continue to put this out as long as I can, obviously, and happy to do it for any and everyone that may not be able to watch every show and kind of wants to keep up with it at the same time. But that'll do it, like I said, and we will see you next week.